All right, guys, happy Wednesday. You know I'm about to talk a lot of smack when I start putting the lip gloss on. So dry your eyes, blow your nose, and let's get into it. Sunlight is the best disinfectant when they won't let you get your nursing license. People ask me, oh, why do you have to sue? And the answer is because none of the other systems are designed to fix this at an individual level. The schools control whether you graduate. The New Jersey Board of Nursing, in my case, controls whether the program stays open, but neither are responsible for making sure what happened to me was fair. That's what the court is for. So when people say, why didn't the board step in? I don't have beef with the board. It's because they don't step into individual cases like this, and that's just the reality. And when the school says you didn't meet our requirements, there's only one place left to challenge that, and that's the legal system. The system has layers, but accountability at the individual level only exists when you fight for it. Systems are designed to fix problems over time, not instantly fix for individuals. So people love to say, oh, well, if something was truly wrong, somebody would have stepped in, somebody would have done something. Right, because systems have a perfect track record of catching problems before they affect people. The truth is, most systems don't respond to individuals, they respond to patterns over time. So unless it happens enough times to matter on paper, it doesn't really matter at all, in my opinion. And by then, it's already happened to somebody else, and somebody else, and somebody else. So think of it like a restaurant, right? Passing inspection, but being served undercooked food once. The health inspector checks trends. Are there repeated violations, or did this happen once or twice? Was it one plate of bad food and one unhappy customer? Then it doesn't matter. That's exactly what happens in systems like schools and boards. They regulate the program, not the person. So that's where people like you and me fall through the cracks. Think about the Epstein files. There were warning signs, multiple victims, and even reports, but the system didn't act immediately. This happened over years. The harm happened repeatedly before the law was able to catch up. So a lot of people ask me, in my case, if this was wrong, why didn't the board step in? And again, the truth is, they don't have the power like people think they do. The New Jersey Board of Nursing, in my case, doesn't decide if I get to graduate. The school does. They can approve programs, they can investigate patterns, but they can't actually force the school to allow me to graduate, to say, give her her degree, put that conferral date on that transcript. They do not have the authority to step into that school and take my transcript from them and type in what they want. It doesn't work like that. They can't just let me take the NCLEX anyway because they have somebody to answer to. Even if I have everything required, because I do not have that degree on that transcript and that conferral date, because without that, the board can't step in and take me anyway. That was the catch. That's the gap. Because by the time the system recognizes these patterns, the individual student is already stuck with the outcome anyway. So it's not that nothing was happening. It wasn't happening fast enough to protect me and others from going through it in real time. So the gap, as I see it, the board regulates the program, the school controls the student's outcome. Without certification from the school saying, I've completed this program, legally the board cannot take me as is. They have the state to answer to as well. Because legally, they're not even the ones who denied me. My beef is not with the board. They've done nothing wrong. They oversee the system and came out with the regulation officially in 2022, preventing nursing schools from gatekeeping students from taking the NCLEX when it comes down to an exit exam failure only. It's not that they knew and they didn't care, because the regulation proves otherwise. They just need enough evidence of a pattern before they act. So it's not that this regulation doesn't matter because something happened to me beforehand. They were well aware by public documents, reflects what was happening and why changes were being made, but it took time. It took multiple complaints to see a possible pattern. It was, in my opinion, a statewide concern. A regulatory action needed to be taken. If it just happened to me, then it's just an individual issue. Welcome back to the nursing investigation. So, meantime in between time, after I'm like, okay, this is not happening, they're not giving me my certification to the board so I can get my ATT and sit for NCLEX, I'm like, wow, sheesh, I'm going to have to literally start all over again. I'm going to have to take the same amount of years to save up, put myself in a position to maybe try and go back to school, even if that's possible. So I start working from home. I start learning every way and any way to make money. Shopify, eBay, Amazon, affiliate marketing, social media, even being an SW here and there, a UGC creator, Fiverr, Upwork, you name it, I've tried it, I've done it, I've made money through it. Even social media. Did I mention that? That's my favorite. But I was like, you know what? The world is evolving now. Like, the internet was just becoming a thing back then, so we didn't have all the information we had now. I wasn't expecting, virtual money or Wi-Fi money, they call it, to become a thing, but it definitely did. So I was like, all right, get your money up. You're in this much debt now. You still have a child to feed. Like, you're literally starting in a worse position than you were before because now you have all this debt and wasted time. Your family has died. Your support is lacking. You've been evicted. Like, I'm literally starting so much worse. So it's only going to take me more time to even get to where I was going to be headed. So at this point, I was like starting off in a much worse position. And that was going to take time to fix, if it could even be remedied, because you can never get that time back you had once in your life. Life will never be the same. Your circumstances will always change. So in 2020, remember, I go to school. I start taking interest in Jersey College of Nursing in 2016. In 2017, I actually start the admissions process. Background checks, physicals, vaccines, financial aid, all the things. So from 2017 to 2019, I complete my education. I take the exit exam. By about February 2019, I realize to June 2019, I realize, okay, like this is not happening. Little did I know, in the meantime and in between time, the Board of Nursing had heard our voices. They are in communications with nursing programs about regulations that affect the school's accreditation and also nursing students' eligibility on sitting for the NCLEX because of these said exit exams being used to, in my opinion, protect accreditation. Now, this isn't something the average person knows. This isn't something the average person would know how to find or who to talk to. So while this is happening, I was never notified. So what this proposal, this regulation actually means, the New Jersey Board of Nursing, N.J.A.C 1337-1.3. This is about provisional accreditation, basically when a nursing school is still proving itself. The key parts of this is programs must warn students when they might shut down. If a program doesn't obtain that full accreditation, it will cease operations even if students aren't finished. So this means schools are required to tell you up front, we might fail. If we fail, your education may be cut off. If they fail standards, they must stop teaching students. The board explicitly said programs should not continue teaching students if they are not meeting standards. I think this is huge because to me, the board is saying if a program is not producing competent graduates, it should not keep students enrolled at all. This doesn't mean keep them and add more barriers, trap them at the end with an exit exam. I think the NCLEX pass rates play a huge part here. The NCLEX pass rates are a key requirement. It should be, from my knowledge, about a 75%. programs must hit 75% first-time pass rates within 2 years of their first graduating classes. If they don't, they stay at that provisional accreditation level. Then they eventually lose accreditation if they don't meet those standards. There's a hard 2-year deadline. They will lose that accreditation. They cannot continue operating if they do not meet this criteria. Now, I think this matters in my case because the board's intent was clear. If a program is failing, to me, the board is saying shut it down or fix it at a program level, not punish students at the finish line. But what I believe my school's policy did instead was let students enroll with 2.0's GPA, with all that financial aid, complete the program, then block them at the end with an exit exam after they've already completed the required education needed to be a nurse. I think that directly contradicts the spirit of this rule. In my opinion, I think the rule shows intent. The board wanted to protect students from failing programs, not allow schools to shift burden on the students. So when you tell me, hey, Clarissa, the school can't lose accreditation, right? Well, okay, why is that my responsibility? I'm not on payroll. I'm literally paying the school. And then from my school side, people are saying, and then in my opinion, from the school side, it feels like they avoided accountability. It feels like they shifted that failure onto students like myself through these exit exams. And to me, it feels unconscionable. I took time. I took debt. I took the coursework. I did everything I needed to become a nurse, right? To sit for that NCLEX. At the end, they added this gatekeeping mechanism that literally serves me no purpose. Sure, it can be used as a test-taking tool to help educate me and help me practice, but there is no equivalent to taking the NCLEX. It is not the NCLEX. It cannot deem me ready or not to be a nurse. Only the NCLEX can do that. Meanwhile, I also think the regulation suggests if the program is failing, students shouldn't be there in the first place. So when you talk about, oh, well, the school needs to protect its accreditation, you shouldn't even have let me in the school, in my opinion. I feel like a lot was concealed. I don't believe they clearly explained the risk tied to this accreditation, or didn't explain how the exit exams directly relate to the NCLEX pass rate. I don't believe it was made abundantly clear what this exit exam was being used for. I believe some critical information was hidden from me at the time of admissions and enrollment throughout most of the nursing program. I also think there's an issue with the policy directly. The regulation shows that the board intended to prevent students from being harmed by underperforming programs. Instead of complying with that intent, I feel like the school created internal barriers to artificially inflate those NCLEX pass rate outcomes, placing the burden of that institutional failure onto students like myself who had already completed the program. And then we get into the actual regulation in 2022. So this isn't just a proposal. This isn't just a conversation anymore. The Board of Nursing and the state of New Jersey are very serious about this. Here's likely what I think happened. When schools struggle to meet that 75% NCLEX pass rate, and instead of improving the education, reducing enrollment, or risking closure, it's possible schools introduce these exit exams almost like a filter to filter out those possible at-risk students. And I think that's a problem because the regulation implies the program should bear the consequences, not the students. The New Jersey Board of Nursing made it clear. Programs failing to meet standards should not continue educating students, and instead of complying, schools have allowed students to complete the program. This ultimately shifts those consequences of institutional failure onto the students. And if I'm not mistaken, in the policy where it talks about partial reasoning for utilizing these exit exams, it talks about the student being responsible, saying something to the effect of, I'm paraphrasing here in my own words from how I interpret it, something about, it being the student's responsibility, almost like you're not ready to take the NCLEX, like you haven't met the satisfactory needs to even sit for it, if that makes sense. When that couldn't be farther from the truth. I think the regulation was on the student side. The system that they were trying to make crystal clear was designed to protect the students. I think that it shows the school worked around that protection, and I was caught, just like many others, come to find out, in the gap. The other argument is, okay, Clarissa, what if they weren't in danger of losing accreditation? What if they were just trying to avoid that danger, try to avoid losing that accreditation? What do you have to say about that? I still think this supports my claims because both scenarios point to the same thing. I think the exit exams work on protecting the school, not educating the students. So let's say scenario A, for example. Let's say they were at risk, okay? Near that 75% NCLEX threshold, or on a warning, or on a provisional at accreditation status, okay? Then the exit exams were likely used to filter out students that were predicted. Don't even get me started on that, because who can predict the future? Your ego must be so large to think you could predict anything. But anyways, so filter out those students who were predicted to fail NCLEX and artificially boost those NCLEX pass rates. I think it supports bad faith, actions feeling unconscionable, and shifting that institutional risk onto students. Scenario B, let's say they were not at risk of losing accreditation. Let's say they were fine, right? I think it actually creates, yes, different, but still strong position on my end, because they use these exams preemptively to protect these metrics. That is my opinion. That is how I feel. So I think, let me break this down a little further. Not because students were competent, but to maintain that ranking, those pass rates, the reputation, and the accreditation cushion. I think that's still a huge problem, because now what I would say is they impose this high stakes barrier that was not required for graduation, not required by the board, and not tied to actual course completion, but instead tied to institutional performance metrics. And I say this because when you look at my transcript and you look at another student's transcript who met the benchmark of the exit exam, the two transcripts are basically identical. Obviously, they will vary in, grades, but if you look at them both as far as completion, they are identical. What is on both these transcripts should serve the same purpose in getting that conferral date and that degree earned. The only difference is my degree was withdrawn and that conferral date was withdrawn because I did not pass that exit exam. So essentially, something in the shadows is preventing my graduation. Something not even on my transcript. How can that be? So when we go over these NCLEX pass rates, I'll show you, and do not be fooled by NCLEX pass rates. Because a school has a high NCLEX pass rate, that does not mean every girl who completed the program actually was able to take the NCLEX. So I want to show you a couple scenarios of what it looks like when, in my opinion, a school may be protecting their accreditation by only letting certain students take the NCLEX versus schools that allow all students who have completed their education take the NCLEX. Look at the full numbers. Look at how many girls or how many students took the NCLEX at one school versus another school. That's crazy. We also go back in time. Remember when we were talking about the admissions process and what that looked like for me? The exit exam did not appear until after I had already signed the contract. This is something I didn't even see, didn't even acknowledge, wasn't told about until the fine print came out, and I was told about this way later down the line, until I actually found out. To me, it changed after I enrolled, because all that enrollment material through the admissions process that I showed you in my first couple videos of this investigation did not equal what was about to happen to me at the end. So I feel like there was a disconnect. So in my opinion, you can't tell somebody, right? You're going to go to nursing school, you have to complete all these classes, and then when they go sign the contract, you add an additional barrier that they had no forewarning for up front, let alone the ability to understand what that meant. Nobody actually sat down and explained to me what this exit exam meant, what it was being used for, etc. I think it supports the breaking of the agreement that we had, and I feel it was an unfair surprise. So I feel like most people miss this part. So even if they were fine and schools don't want to wait until they were failing to do something about it, why would they act otherwise? Why would they impose this exit exam barrier if they trusted their program? If their program was so great and the best in the world, why even have this as a barrier? Why? I feel like a lot of schools act when they see pass rates trending down, risk models predicting failures, pressure from regulators maybe. So I think my instinct is right. It's very plausible that exit exams were used to prevent failing into probation. Whether the program was at risk of failing below regulatory thresholds or acting preemptively to avoid such risk, I think the result is still the same in the end. The school imposed an undisclosed, high-stakes barrier unrelated to course completion in order to protect its institutional metrics at the expense of students who had already fulfilled their academic obligations. That is the huge thing for me, right? We all have to take fundamentals of nursing. We all have to take A&P. You literally need that foundation to become a nurse. The board requires certain things of you to consider you a nursing graduate. Nobody needs an exit exam. So OG nurses don't take exit exams. A lot of schools don't require them for you to take the NCLEX, and a lot of other schools don't make you take the exit exam, or a lot of other schools will allow you to fail it and still take the NCLEX. So where is the fairness and consistency in that? So had I went to another school, I would have been allowed to sit for my NCLEX? Like, what? So this isn't about, proving, somebody was at risk or not of losing the accreditation. I don't even think that's the argument. I think the exit exam was used for an institutional protection and not education, like I was led to believe, if anything, at the very least. So again, that raises my argument. Why the exit exam at all? I think it makes it discretionary. I think it makes it arbitrary, and therefore I think it makes it challengeable. The bottom line, if they were struggling, they could impose the exit exam for damage control. If they weren't struggling, they could impose the exit exam as a preemptive filtering to prevent losing accreditation or to keep those NCLEX pass rates high. Why else would they implement an exit exam? The exit exam is not proved to evaluate competency. The only thing it's should be used for, says the makers of these tests themselves, is an educational tool. We could debate all day about predictability and the inaccuracy of that, but when it comes down to it, no board of nursing, the nursing accreditation, the NLN, the NCSBN, like nobody's come out and said these exit exams is equivalent to sitting for your NCLEX. If it was, it would be called the NCLEX. And that brings us to 2022, because remember, the law takes time. When you say, Clarissa, why did it take this long? This is exactly why. This is how the legal system works. The exit exam regulation becomes a regulation in 2022. And I think this is a key misunderstanding as well. When something becomes a regulation in 2022, I don't think it actually means that schools are banned from using exit exams. Instead, it usually means the board changed how programs are evaluated, approved, or disciplined. So here's what I think likely happened in 2022, because again, I was never notified of these changes that could have potentially affected me getting my license or making different decisions at an earlier date until about the time I was sued for defamation by Jersey College School of Nursing. So I think the New Jersey Board of Nursing tightened or clarified these rules around these NCLEX pass rates, the program's accountability, progression, and the graduation standards. But they did not outlaw exit exams outright. They don't need to be outlawed. Like, it's a great tool, I think, to use for educational purposes, to learn, to grow, not to use as a gatekeeper to your profession when you've completed nursing school. So people ask me, okay, if that's true and all, if the board doesn't think the students are accountable for accreditation, then how can the school still do this? Because legally, schools still have academic discretion. So essentially, on paper, they can set graduation requirements, require internal exams, define program completion, unless it violates the contract or it's applied unfairly, inconsistently, or it's deceptive, or my favorite, to me, does things in ways that feel unconscionable. That is where I think my case comes in. Just because somebody can do something doesn't mean they have the right to do it. That is the difference. The regulation doesn't automatically make what they did illegal per se, but I think it gives you guys context on why I feel like challenging this decision of not letting me take my NCLEX. I think the real argument isn't they weren't allowed to use exit exams or not, but they use the exit exams in a way that conflicts with the purpose of the regulation and unfairly harms students like myself. The exit exam, like, what is the point of going through nursing school and completing your education to not being able to sit for your profession? It literally defeats the whole purpose. And I also think, to note, it feels like unforeseeable circumstances. I couldn't have known what was going on behind the scenes, possible private communications about these exit exams and all the things. How could I have known what was going to come out in the future? How could I have known that something was going to be overturned, that this was a conversation being had, that this was going to be something that could allow me to take my NCLEX, you know? Because even if it doesn't ban exit exams itself, I think it shows the board's intent, transparency, accountability at the program level, and protecting the students, none of which I believe the school did for me. If you truly wanted your students to pass, why would you not help them? To throw 4 exit exams at me, let alone 1, and basically make me insane by repeating this test, doing the same thing over and over and over, getting the same score over and over and over. It's not like I was off a little bit. No, by their benchmark versus my scores, I was not going to get that benchmark without serious help from the school in getting there. And I never received that. I was doing UWorld questions. I was doing a trial on UWorld. I had a basic Saunders book to study for ATI, HESI, NLN. Like, what? Like, you're telling me I'm about to take the hardest test I will probably ever take in my life, and I don't get direct study materials for this? I can't know which test I'm taking? And then also, it's going to be timed. I'm not going to know which test I'm taking till I walk in the room. I can't get a study guide for any of this. Like, I feel like if you really wanted a student to pass, you would do everything in your power to support them in doing so. And I feel like that's the opposite of what the board's intentions were when proposing this regulation. I think the argument becomes, even after these regulatory changes emphasizing the program's accountability, the school continued using these internal barriers to control outcomes, placing the burden solely on the students instead of addressing the institutional performance. And then here's another thing I think about. I'm like, you accepted me into your school with a 2.0 GPA. You said C's get degrees. You passed me along, and then at the very end, you have me take the hardest test I will ever take without any preparation that would help me do great on that exam. It kind of feels like moving the benchmark after I already crossed the line. How is that fair? That is injustice. And if you think this is lowering the bar in nursing school, you're sadly mistaken of what justice actually means. To me, that feels like the policy changed after I enrolled. It feels like the exit exam got harder. It feels like it was hard to begin with, harder than anything I ever saw before. The passing score increased. The retake rules changed. New requirements added. Oh, you can't retake this exam, but you can retake version 2, or you can retake another vendor. Or with this exam, some of the questions aren't going to count, so you have to be careful. Or this one's going to be timed like this per question. Or that verbal agreement you make still holds weight. What you knew of that was going to take place still matters. For example, you can't make somebody sign a mortgage, for example, and then in fine print say, okay, once you pay it off, we're going to take it back from you. Huh? That's not what you told me. That's not normal. When people, buy a mortgage and pay it off, they don't have to pay the mortgage anymore. Their home is theirs. So just because somebody, what? Or let's say I go to nursing school, right? And then at the end, they say, oh, well, you need to go to pilot school to be a pilot to get your nursing license. What? You should have it makes no sense. You might as well. And then on another note, I think about this is equivalent to saying, oh, you completed nursing school, but you don't have a pilot degree. So you're going to need to go and get a pilot degree to be able to take your NCLEX. What? That's not even needed to be a nurse. It makes no sense. So that's where I feel there was a breach in the agreement. I feel that it was unfair, and I feel like it was a retroactive policy change. Now, another critical point beyond that is, remember, the New Jersey Board of Nursing, in my case, does not require exit exams or benchmarks of said exams for graduation, right? That is the opposite of what the regulation is portraying. So if the school says, let's say hypothetically speaking, we had to do this because of the board, that's potentially misleading. To ever indicate explicitly, ambiguously, whatever, to ever try to indicate that it was needed to obtain my ATT to sit for NCLEX, I think that deserves to be challenged because it wasn't ever a requirement by the Board of Nursing. I think the core of my story is they're allowed to have exit exams, but I don't think schools are allowed to hide them, change them mid-program, use them unfairly, use it as a financial trap, or disconnect it from the actual coursework. So kind of think of it like this. The regulation is about programs meeting standards, and I feel, it's my opinion, that the school could have turned it into students must prove our standards. Huh? It's your school. It's your program. It's your education. It's your teachers. The regulatory changes were intended to hold nursing programs accountable for these outcomes. Instead, it feels like the school imposed additional barriers on students who had already completed their coursework. At this point, it's like beating a dead horse. I don't know how many times I can say it. Effectively shifting that institutional responsibility onto individuals like myself. It wasn't my responsibility to take. So, of course, sometimes I still sit with the fact, I'm like, how could they do this to me? You know, I sit in pity, I sit in the depression, I sit in the unknown, I sit with the unfairness and the injustice. And I'm like, how is this possible? How is this happening to me? And now so many others. My messages are flooded and I'm working on them so much. I'm so grateful because this is not a common everyday experience for everybody. So it feels nice to know, hey, I'm not crazy. Hey, this did happen as I said it happened. And I'm working to get through those messages. I'm just an empath by nature. So I really have to train myself to read for research and educational purposes and to help and keep it professional rather than absorbing everybody's story, because I know how it feels. So I know how you feel. And it's hard not to sit with everybody's pain on top of mine and still get through the day. And I still am very determined to help as many people as I can. Again, this isn't about me. This is about how these exit exams harm the most vulnerable first. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with injustice. And we will get into this in the incoming weeks about how schools like this are placed in certain areas for a reason, who they take advantage of first, and why, and all the things. It really hurts my heart that people were taken advantage of in similar situations and they may not even know it, or they may be taking responsibility for something that wasn't even theirs to take. Anyways, so when I sit with that, I feel like the answer, truly in my opinion, is the regulation didn't explicitly ban the use of the exit exams. It feels like, you know, the schools still have academic control. Like, a school can open and they can create policies and, you know, set their own assurance and qualities, if you will. But I feel like that does not mean that it was fair, disclosed, lawful under contract law, right? Like, somebody can do whatever they want, but it can be challenged, just like freedom of speech. We all can say whatever we want, but somebody can challenge that at any time. The bottom line here, I think, is in 2022, when the exit exam became a regulation as far as it not solely being used to prevent students from taking their NCLEX, It didn't protect me automatically per se, but I think it strengthens, my position about, the intent of these exit exams, the fairness and the misuse on a broader scale. And remember, if something happens to one person, two people, three people, it's not a big deal, right? One plate of bad food isn't a big deal. One bug in your food from a restaurant isn't a big deal. Now, when you get hundreds, if not thousands of people affected, especially in a profession like nursing that affects the public, the nursing shortage, that affects the debt in the economy nationwide, that affects people being on welfare and not going to work, that matters. That becomes an issue. That's when you call on your states, your legislators, hell, even the president of the United States. I don't give a damn. Somebody will know what is going on, what has happened, and I will be sure of it. There is no reason nursing students, should be sitting at home with a completed education, not being able to go to work in their profession that they rightfully earned because a school does not feel confident in their program education, that they felt the need to put the responsibility on their students to protect said accreditation. And nonetheless, take all their money and leave them with nothing and no path to licensure. How do you sleep at night? How do you sleep at night in your big house with your nice cars and your full wallet, knowing you are taking from people who have less than you and you left them with even less? Especially in a career field like nursing that affects everybody, that will affect your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your child. Everybody will need a nurse at one point. And the nursing shortage shouldn't even be a thing. If you don't think that affects you as a nurse, you're wrong, because that's why you can't get the union you need and the support you need, because there's not enough of us to go around to help you fight. That's why you can't get Christmas off, because there's not enough nurses on the floor. There's not enough people to voice change that's needed to make the nursing industry better, and I think this is one of the reasons why that is. And if you are not a nurse and you are just a patient, or you will be a patient in life, it affects you too, because that's your quality of care. That nurse to patient ratio isn't looking too good lately. They are burnt out, they are underpaid, and I truly believe, again, this is one of the reasons why people are not getting quality of care. Also, to add, students are being pressured to do great on the NCLEX the first time, and that's about it. Nurses are being trained to be good test takers and not actual nurses. I don't know how many nurses come out of grad school and they don't know what to do. All they know is how to get an A or a B on a test. They don't know how to put a catheter in. They don't know how to take a blood pressure. That is more scary than saying, hey, this girl completed her nursing education and can't take the NCLEX because it's been X amount of years. I think the biggest question people have is, if this was wrong, why didn't the board stop it? I don't have beef with the board. The board did what it should have done. It stepped in. It saw what was happening, it heard what was happening, and stepped in and did what they could do. In my opinion, it feels like the board is on my side when it comes to the exit exams because of this regulation. They did step in. They did do their part. That's all they can do. It doesn't work like that. They can't just make somebody do something. That's why we have the court of law. The New Jersey Board of Nursing doesn't sit inside these schools making every decision. They set standards and then step in when those patterns show up, and that's exactly what they did. I don't have the beef with the Board of Nursing. I actually appreciate them more than you know. So yes, a school can still be in good standing and still be doing things that can harm students, as contradictory as it sounds. Good standing just means they haven't crossed the line enough to trigger another action. And that's what people are missing. In 2019, it felt like a personal failure. It was individualized to me. But by 2020, they heard all of the voices that started speaking up, which triggered this conversation. By 2022, those changes were made. So by 2024, I realized It may have just never been me. So this isn't about blaming the board or pretending schools have no control. It's about understanding how a system can allow something to happen long before it ever steps in to fix it. At this point, I feel like I'm in a custody battle. I am in a custody battle between the Board of Nursing and Jersey School of Nursing for the ability to sit for my NCLEX. I literally feel like my degree is being held hostage by dad over here who says, oh, you can't go to mom's, you're not ready, I want you to stay home. And the board's over here like, no, honey, like you can come home, like it's safe, you're fine, come with me. And now I have to go to court and go litigate this matter and go to trial and do all these things to try and go to mom's house. Are you kidding me? You both created me. I did everything I needed to do. I am just as much your child as I am the Board of Nursing's at this point once I completed my education. Why can't I go home? Why can't I grow up? Why won't you let me go? Like, I'm an adult now. Once I completed my education, I earned that. Like, I can make my own decisions. I can go into my profession now. I don't need to stay home with you every day. You don't need to watch me every day anymore. I did what I needed to do. So this week was really the bridge tying it all together from what happened to the beginning to getting us here now. This is where we get into the law. How did the defamation happen? Why was I sued for defamation? Where am I at now? We'll be getting into that next week where we really break down. This is the part everybody wants to know. How did I actually get sued for defamation by my nursing school? Why did Jersey College School of Nursing sue me for defamation after I came out speaking about my story and requesting my diploma? When they receive negative Google reviews, for example, all the times, all businesses do. You can't please everybody. What are you going to go around suing everybody who leaves you a negative review? Why did they choose me? What makes my story different? We're going to get into that next week. I'm glad. Thank you so much for sticking with me through our 11 episodes so far, because now we can really get into the nitty-gritty of how this has all happened and catching up to present time where we are today. Now that the story's been told, how does that tie into the law? How does this tie into class actions? How does this tie into a systemic and public policy issue? How am I even able to talk about this matter online so explicitly? We're going to break it all down. Let's get into some questions and comments from the week. Tracy says, I'm currently in Jersey, in Teterboro right now. I'm in the LPN RN program. It is hell being here. It feels like they want you to fail. Tracy, I think you're so brave for speaking out about your experience. Thank you for being here. Fairy Tale with Ruby says, I attended Jersey College and I don't have anything positive to say. Thank you for sharing your experience with us, Ruby. Chaleta says, I went to Jersey College and I will never go back. Their resume person contacted me to see if I needed anything additional almost 2 years later. Also, they called me to come back and I never did. I have a story too to tell about Jersey College, and we love to see it. Monique says, Jersey College has or is in needing to be sued for this. So I am in I did file a lawsuit against Jersey College. They do have multiple other cases that have been filed, which we will get into at a later date. Miss Henry says, that's where I went for 18 months and I still didn't get a license because I failed the exit. To note, anybody who is in a similar situation or has had the same experience, especially if you went to Jersey College School of Nursing, please DM me. Also, I will be linking a forum if you want to keep your fight private for now. I understand how scary it is. From my understanding, their contracts have also changed, so people get scared speaking up publicly about certain things, which is normal. You know, that's what a lot of contracts are made for, to instill fear in you. And by myself as example, what they did to me with the defamation case also sends a signal to the public of what could be you. You know, it's meant to instill fear, and that's okay. I get it. Take your time. If you privately want to reach me, I've submitted a private forum you can sign up for, and I I want to keep a list of everybody who's been affected, for reasons being that wherever this ends up, this fight started with just me, you know, wanting to get my ability to sit for NCLEX. But if it doesn't end up like that, or if this problem is in fact systemic and this could affect others, not just myself, and this turns into a bigger, how can I say this? If this turns into something that could affect others as well and change outcomes for others, that is what the forum is for. I want to hear your story, and you're not just a number, you're a story too, and I would like to keep your information on file for if and when that day comes, okay? So I do have a petition as well. If you're outspoken, if you're a public speaker, go ahead and do both, like whatever your comfort level is, all right? So, but we need to keep in touch, because right now, I can't tell you where this is going to end up. But if you want to come along for the journey, if your story is similar to mine and you want to get your ATT to sit for your NCLEX, I have to have some sort of way to contact you, okay? Or give you the information you need so you can take the steps that you feel are necessary to do that, if that's what you want to do. I'm in active litigation, so I can't tell anybody what to do, but I can share with you my journey and tell you what I'm doing, and take your information down and keep it for a rainy day. Halima says, millions of students out there completed their whole program but was held from having their license because of this so-called exit exam. Half of the people involved in Operation Nightingale were students from Jersey College. That is interesting. Now, Kalima is alleging this. This is her opinion, but I do want to look into this. I think this is interesting. Operation Nightingale were the bunch of fake nurses that went on to get their license, all these things. I really do think this is a piece of the story. This is speculation, but I'm going to look into this. Wani_love says, I went there for my LPN, do not recommend. Ebony says, I felt like I was set up to fail when going there. Jules28 says, I went to this school and my heart breaks for students who went to the end and had to drop out because of this exit exam. You are right. This shouldn't end up in a lawsuit. The laws should change. Thank you, Jules. I totally agree. Tammy says, I attended Jersey College as well and was withdrawn because of exit exams. There's a Google form and a petition in my bio. Dream Girl Sheeta says, you need to find out if they applied for licensure as an hours program, because if they did, then an exit exam is not a part of their state-approved curriculum and you can't be held back for that. I really like this comment, whether it's true or not. Again, this is Dream Girl's alleged, this is just how she feels, this is her opinion, this is what she's alleging. Because again, it's not on my transcript. How is something not even on my transcript preventing me from moving forward in my profession? Ash Cash says, keep track of missed job opportunities and sue for damages. I really like this comment. Mitchie Aguilera Gamble says, I didn't know this was possible. Like what? And that's exactly why it's important to share my story. Chintella says, what in the actual hell? Den Den says, I didn't even realize you went to that place before I did. Praying for you and that everything will be rewarded to you. Thank you so much. CLROMSTADT says, me in nursing school seeing this, and the emoji that's like, Talani underscore BSN, go you girl. She says, cause WTF? Dude, I love your comments. Like, I love them all. Next week, we're going to get into the defamation of it all and how I was even sued. How do you even get sued by your nursing school? What really went down? So thank you for watching. Thank you for all your support. I will see you guys next week. Bye, guys.